All right, can everybody hear me? Okay, great. Looks like we're having technical issues, but I think we got it all
Okay, I
sorted
think
out.
the audio stream is now live.
Audio stream is live? All right. All right, everybody, thanks. We'll get our meeting kicked off here. All right, so we'll call to order the Middleton Airport Commission meeting for December 4th. And Brian, you can start off with our roll call.
Yes, Commissioner Nye. So can you check your audio?
Present.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Randall.
Present.
Commissioner Schwartz.
I'm here.
Commissioner Myers.
Present.
Commissioner Wubin.
Here.
Chair Lorman.
Here. And Jack Young is excused and absent. Proof of posting, got that done?
Yes, the agenda was posted at the airport, the city hall, and on the website.
All right, do we have anybody online who wishes to contribute public comment? All right, that. With Commissioner Young's absence, he did ask me to read a statement for public comment, and I'll just do that. So Commissioner Young asked me to read the following regarding, he said I wanted to provide my points of view on two scheduled agenda items as well as recurring topics that are not currently on the evening's agenda. I'd ask that these be added to the public comments. First, the capital flight proposal. He says, I agree with the letters of support and support proceeding with capital flight as proposed. There are two significant terms that I believe the proposed lease agreement revision partially addresses that I'd like to further articulate. The language that allows the city to repossess the site should the city airport at some time desire utilization of this space for incorporating into a broader terminal function. He said he agrees with public access use language. However, I'm not certain the lease currently provides all protections that the commission and city might desire. I propose prior to leasing signing, Cap Flight provide details on what the actual park or public access use will specifically entail. For example, nature of facility and amenities, public access process, capital flight and city airport contributions to this, other limitations, etc. Next item regarding the airport manager RFP, I believe an RFP process should proceed. Economics, breadth, and timeliness of service provided and community development airport promotions are the lenses I would recommend to evaluate responses. I don't believe any further document or detailed services beyond those currently published in the RFP draft is necessary. And of course, when we get to the UL discussion, where are we with timing on UL on the field? And future agenda items would be looking into basically jet fuel availability, different types of, he's basically saying airport manager has supported feedback from fuel users for implementation of more competitive jet fuel availability on the field. His opinion is these changes will have a positive effect on utilization of both more field-based users and transit users as fueling destinations should be commended. We'll look forward to seeing results of the test and an update progress, and that will provide this during my chair report. Will updates on RPZ and so on and so forth. So with that, we will move on. No one else is waiting for public comment? Nope. All right, I've reviewed the minutes. I'll accept them as they've been submitted.
Mr. Chair, I
sorry.
object to the minutes as they're written.
Okay, thanks.
My my last name is misspelled twice on page 2.
Oh,
Spelled
yeah.
M-E-Y instead of
MY.
M-Y-E-R-S.
Okay.
So I'd ask to have that corrected in the accepted minutes.
All right. M, where is it being misspelled? Oh, down in the body of it.
Yeah, and it's on page 2, once when I'm seconding a motion and once when I'm making a motion.
Okay. That does seem to be a theme in our city.
Yeah, it's my favorite form of hazing.
Okay. Brian, you will correct those? He's on mute.
Yes, I'll correct that.
All right. With the corrections as requested by Commission Member Myers, I'd like to make a motion to, I'll make a motion then to approve the minutes with Myers' correction as submitted. And would you like to second that?
I would like to second that, yes.
Okay, very good. All those in favor of correcting the minutes, please say aye.
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 All right, thank you very much. Okay, chair report. I'll hand this over to Brian for an update, if any, from the FAA.
Don't have much update from what I provided on last month. I've asked for another update from BOA on the status of our ALP approval. They're still waiting on one line of business from the FAA to approve that, and then we'll get our notice of completion. I have reached out to Senator Johnson's office for an assist to provide some additional reach out to the FAA office to kind of expedite the review of that last piece of information that's needed so we can get that item taken care of. So as soon as I get information from either the BOA or the FAA on that, I'll let the commission know.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have anything else to add to the chair report, and we can move on to the manager's report.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but just well,
Oh, you're muted again, Dave.
on the submittal that for the report that references the number of Young Eagles flights, that should be corrected to add an additional 1,402 Young Eagles flights. And when I put those statistics together, and we were talking to the EAA, we forgot to separate out chapter 1389 before the merger. So those additional numbers represent the chapter 1389 separate numbers before the merger.
Fantastic. Just want to let you know that I did read this to the Common Council Tuesday night in an update on committees and commissions. So I appreciate all the work that went into this. This was an ask for a while, and our Commissioner Schwartz gathered this information, and I really appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions about this? Go ahead, Carol.
Pushing wrong buttons here. No questions. This is fantastic. Thank you, David. Thank both Davids and whoever else went to compiling this. This is the kind of information that's exciting for, the community to know, and the council members, and, eventually, hopefully in, more public newspaper clippings and things like that. But it's just impressive. So thank you.
Yeah, and in my presentation to the Common Council, I just played around with some rough numbers and figured if there's a 3,783 Young Eagle flights, maybe each flight is 3/10 to 4/10 of an hour, anywhere at a cost of say 12 and a half to $15 an hour. At a bare minimum, the local pilots are contributing about $150,000 of their time, um, aircraft time, and into this. So it really adds up. And how many community-based organizations are throwing that kind of time and money into their volunteer effort is quite impressive. So
Because in totality, what really comes through here is the community service aspect of having this asset as part of the city of Middleton. And I'm just really grateful to see it. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So well, and um, what we can probably do is anytime anybody has any more details on this type of activity, I'm certainly happy to always include it in the chair report. And so I wanted to make sure it was printed as part of our agenda packet so it will live on. Rich, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Very good. So, neighborhood relations. This is our standard format for the manager's report. From October 28th through November 31, 3 individuals made 35 noise or overflight reports via phone, email, or the city online reporting site. 1 individual made 32 reports. No violations of the FAA regulations were apparent in the reports. Their aircraft reported appeared to be following the voluntary noise abatement procedure and were at pattern altitude during the overflight, the vast majority of them. Again, I have reached out via our radio with new folks to make sure they're educated as to what we want for our noise abatement procedure. And flight school at Madison at Wisconsin Aviation, they seem to be read in on it as well. They spend a lot of time over here practicing. No aircraft accidents or incidents on the field. Our first snow event occurred, put in a lot of hours, and we're able to move that heavy, wet foot or so that we've got. Other news events, things are sort of winding down with the holidays in the fall. We had a sketching group, the Madison group, come out and take sketch aircraft and parts and things. November 8th, we're happy to have them. Willa Brown Volunteer Appreciation event in our hangar again later that evening. The Visual and Meteorological Club met in the conference room. That was on the 13th. And the Garden Club met in the conference room on the 24th. Now, none of these groups, being civic organizations, it's more airplane companies' policy not to charge for the room use. This is open to any group that's a civic organization or not for profit to be as well, first come, first serve basis to schedule. VMC is future events taking off in December. We may or may not have a safety seminar on December 16. The young man, Middleton High School graduate flight instructor, that was going to help present with me, has been hired by a charter service, a jet charter service, so he probably will not be available for that. So we'll see what happens. Other than that, we're just kind of wrapping things up for the year.
Great, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Rich? Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, actually, to back up just a second, nothing for Rich, but on the chair's report.
Yes.
And I might have missed it, but do we still have cargo flights coming in and out of Maury?
That would be a question for Rich.
See, okay, I'm not muted. Very good. No, the cargo flights stopped a while back. I'm not sure in the past, and they may pick up again for the holidays, but in the past, we'd have several come in on a daily basis for the holiday season. And we used to have our regular shipments for Exact Science, neither of which have been happening recently. So we haven't been getting freight runners in here at all.
Yeah, I remember seeing their 1900s coming in and out and stuff like that with the UPS trucks. The only reason I bring that up is, could that be a line item on that chairperson's report, kind of with the running total of Young Eagle flights and all the other things that are going on with the airport? Somewhat the ulterior motive being that there is more than just, hobbyist airplane people out at the airport, that there's actually some commercial activity going on as well. So that I just propose that might be something that is added to that report, A, to reflect things that have gone on in the past, and B, if they do pick up again, that might be something that we add to that as well.
Yeah, I guess would be a question for Rich is what type of is there a way to really kind of track more than just what was in the master plan in terms of general aircraft activity? We know it's about 40,000 operations a year, but do we have kind of a more granular view of the type of aircraft? So
David, let me look into that. We do have a receiver on the building for ADSB data, and I believe there's a way to mine that, so we could probably check registrations. Certainly, we're getting an awful lot of corporate and chartered jet activity, as well as twin engine and even single engine turboprop activity coming in on a regular basis. So that's something that we could look at and see what we can come up with for numbers.
yeah, I've done some poking around with, like, I think is it FlightAware or FlightWatch, and if you subscribe to their service, there might be some data out there. But you probably have to have a service with your current transceiver. So okay, Cara.
I just on the manager's report, as much as I'd like an extra day in November, there's 30, not 31.
All right. And Rich did get some coyote urine to spread around to slow down, maybe to discourage some activity around the airport as well. We'll see.
Yeah, well, if I may address that, David,
Yeah.
we are definitely doing everything we possibly can to haze the sandhill cranes to make this a less appealing area for them. And part of that was the predator scent, which the DNR or whoever recommended using the coyote urine as something that would do that. Not likely to be spreading that anytime soon. I know they'll be migrating south if they haven't already. I haven't seen any on the airport since the snow. And the spring we'll have to be a bit more aggressive about that. And certainly in the areas where they've been a nuisance, we might be able to provide spray bottles to various clients or tenants here that are having issues with it, and that might help.
Charles.
Yeah, I'd just like Rich. There are people who are not as familiar with aviation and the specific hazards presented by birds near airplanes. So if you could please just explain to people why we definitely need to keep the sandhill cranes away from airplanes near the runway.
Okay. Well, I'll do a very quick overview. In the Well, since 1945, when we started here, we've had exactly one crane airplane accident or incident. Excuse me, it wasn't an accident. And that was not one of the native birds. That was in the fall when we had a group of migratory animals coming through. A young one was ingested into a jet engine. Now, we have had issues with seagulls. We've had issues with ducks. We've had issues with geese as well. So it is important to try to keep these birds away from landing and takeoff areas, especially and/or the approach ends, because if anyone who's seen the movie Miracle on the Hudson knows you don't want to fly through a flock of geese or anything else. It can do a lot of damage. And can cause engine failures in extreme cases. Now, that said, we really haven't had a heck of a lot. The practices that we have implemented, the hazing of the birds with what we call a pyrotechnic device, basically a blank pistol that shoots a M80 into the air, has worked. People are very aware that when the seagulls are on the runway, you don't take off into them. You do what call us, and we try to run them off, things along those lines. But yeah, birds, especially larger birds, can cause or be quite a hazard to aircraft, both on takeoff and especially on landing.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay.
Any more questions for Rich? Okay. Next item is a discussion item, the Confluence Pond. And
Mr. Chair, before you get to that, can we maybe delay discussion of that end for just a little bit? Our staff person, Kevin Short, our assistant parks director, is in another meeting with another community stakeholder group. And so as soon as he gets out of that meeting, he'll jump on the Zoom. So I'm wondering if we can just maybe move down
okay,
some of our other agenda items, and we'll come back to that when he's able to join us on Zoom.
because he did say that he wouldn't be able to join, but did you text him? Were you in communication?
He just emailed me saying that once his other meeting is done, he'll jump on.
Okay. We can say, just let him know, I guess, send him a message right back and say that, and we'll see what he says. Okay, we'll move on. And all right. Let's go right down to capital flight. Discussion and consideration and potential action on capital flight, land lease, expansion, facility, and development proposal. I have some comments and things to get into, but maybe before I do that, I'd like to hear what commission members have to say, and then we can go down the list, or if you would like, I can just start us off right down the list first. Any preference, David?
Sure. I just have I guess I want to clarify, as I read the proposed agreement, it combines uses, and it says that it could be for a SASO or for an FBO. And those two things are very distinct things. A building for a SASO is owned by the SASO operator, whereas typically the FBO is owned by the airport. And historically, and I don't have all the background on this, but as I understand it, there's some third party entity that currently owns the FBO building that we have. If I'm right about that, I have two questions about that. Number one, why we're going away from that, if in fact this is potentially an FBO building. And number two, why the documents combine the concepts of SASO and FBO when they really are two different things.
Yeah, so I mean, I put them in there that way. Just, my focus was just on, how do we turn sort of a regular hangar lease into something that requires sort of the service component that we talked about at the last meeting. I guess I hadn't really, I mean, I certainly wasn't expecting at any point in the near term that this would become an FBO building, but theoretically, Capital Flight could have business troubles, and maybe somebody else comes in and takes over. FBO business expands. And so yeah, I mean that really was the only thought that went into it, is just having to have one of those two types of agreement in place seemed to be the best way to sort of ensure that this was meeting the language in the master plan, that this was a spot that's supposed to be for the service to the airport, not just some private hangar to do whatever anybody wants. So,
along those lines, and again, I don't mean to be changing the whole thing here, but looking at what we've done previously, is there a third-party group similar to the group that owns the current FBO that would be the owner of this and have Capital Flight be paying a leasehold, similar to what we do with the current buildings?
well, I mean, I think our current arrangement with MADC being the owner of, well, actually, I think the city is actually still the own. How does that lease arrangement go? I think we actually lease back the main terminal building back to MADC, who is required to then lease it to the FBO. And part of that had to just do with the financing of the purchase agreement and how MADC got involved. I don't think that ownership structure really had anything to do with how the FBO needs to relate to the owner of the airport or anything like that.
So, yeah, and that, I understand what you're saying. I guess my concern a little bit is that the function of an FBO is a building that I could walk into and I can roam around the FBO building as long as I'm there doing airplane type business, etc. Whereas a SASO is very much a private business. And that's what I'm having a hard time distinguishing what we're doing with this particular agreement.
Well, and certainly in the short term, we expect, I mean, Capital Flight really operates under a SASO agreement. That's probably what we expect to continue. I don't know if there would be any amendments, because one of the other things that I thought be valuable to discuss about this, and just to preface all this, this is very much a first draft. This is kind of a little bit something new, and so I kind of expected there'd be a lot of thoughts from the commission, the airport users, about how all this really works and stuff in practice. But certainly in the short term, that's what we expect. So one of the other things, though, I thought would be, maybe things that we'd want to think about is, there's a lot of different things that can go on under those types of agreements. Is there anything in particular that we want this lease to ensure in terms of service is going to be provided, or is it just enough that some of those services be provided? So just one thing. Another thing I think we probably, as we work on this a bit, could look a little bit more. Right now we've got certain plans being proposed, and I think probably through site plan review processes, there's probably still some control over what it actually gets built. But right now within this lease agreement, there's nothing that says really a specific layout or a specific type of building is getting built. Maybe something we want to consider incorporating into the terms as well. Along with, other things everything was mentioned. If there's the outdoor park sort of component, whatever that's going to be, how is that? Is that just really an outdoor space that's run and operated by the private business, but is open to the public, which is fine? Or is it intended to be some sort of dedication where the city is going to be maintaining it? And so the degree and whether that is addressed in great detail in this agreement, I guess, is still a little up in the air in my mind as well.
Sure. So consistent with that, and I also think consistent with the public comments that Jack had that Dave read out, I think maybe a next step would be to ask Matt what he has in mind at Capital Flight for public use of the facility and that sort of thing, and get answers from him that we might be able
Right, and I don't know if Matt is on or not. I mean,
I am. Can you hear me?
yeah, oh, there he is.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
he just got this
Hey,
a couple of
everybody.
days ago. I wasn't able to get it to him until I think, well, what was it, Tuesday, Matt?
Yeah, and we've reviewed it, and there's we had a rather lengthy meeting trying to accommodate some of the answers and some of the things that this area was meant to be, and this is kind of the first run at it, but we're getting there, I guess I would say. So I'm happy to field some of the answers that some of the questions that you might have regarding this, to kind of bring some additional clarity if need be.
Sure. Charles, do you have do you have a question for Matt that's along this same line?
No, I was just, well, there are two Matts.
Yeah. So, right. So, yeah, go ahead and ask both Matts. So we can see this one point kind of through to a point before we get on to the next one.
Yeah, so I like Lawyer Matt's decision to keep this pretty broad initially for either FBO or SASO, just because if we ever get to a point where it's a change between one and the other in how the building is used, then it becomes a lease modification, then it becomes a whole thing. Whereas writing it as broadly as you have, Matt, gives us a lot of flexibility going forward. So,
Well, and like I said, it wasn't really an intention that I thought, oh, we need to accommodate. I was just thinking about how do you just define what kind of uses or what kind of situation has to be there such that it fulfills the master plan. It wasn't so much a thought of, boy, this could really be an FBO in the next, maybe within the expected term of this agreement. So.
right, but I like it when our legal documents are nice and flexible for potential changes in use, especially when we're building right up against the terminal, potentially.
Got it. Rich, I see your hand up. You can comment as the airport manager, but can't really speak, to anything else on this.
Well, David, I just want to clarify the situation with the terminal building here, because Matt Fleming was not quite clear on it. It's owned by MEDC, the terminal. The land is leased basically by Maury Airplane Company through MEDC. And the reason, instead of MEDC loaning the money to Maury Airplane Company as they would normally have done, for us to own the FBO building, the city felt that would give Maury Airplane Company too much power, and they did not want the FBO to actually own the building that they were in. And you can go back and look at the original. I'm assuming there's some notes along those lines, but that was the reason that was given for Maury not owning this building, that it was going to be this essentially a city, the city couldn't afford the building. That's why the MADC stepped in, and they wanted it to be a separate entity. So if, for instance, there was a change in FBO, or the FBO ended up leaving, they wouldn't have own the building. That would make the transition easier. That's all I have to really say. There's the clarification as to what the situation is, which is the city owns the land, of course. The land is leased, but the building is owned by MEDC and leased by Maury Airplane Company. and then the reason why.
Yeah,
Okay,
Rich
thank
is
you.
correct. Or yeah, I just pulled it up again. I always forget exactly how that all set up. But yeah, it is a land lease to MADC. MADC is the owner of the building. We certainly have rights to be purchasing it back and have quite a bit of control over the space, but that is the correct existing arrangement. But I think Rich is right that I mean I think either way, I mean if the city could have bought the building and the finances, it could have been just a lease with the city to Rich, and that's certainly why the FBO was not the owner of the building. But that wasn't a reason for MADC's involvement, I guess is what I was getting at. MADC's involvement was to help of the financing. Yeah.
Right, in theory, there's nothing preventing Capital Flight from going to MADC. Go to anybody they want.
Right.
Brian, you are summarizing this, or just however you want to keep track of these thoughts.
Yep, I'm taking notes.
Yeah, I don't think we're looking for motions on this. We're just looking for feedback and consensus. David, I would be interested in your, not to pit one person's consensus against another person's. How do you feel towards a broader language, or are you thinking more it needs to be more focused? If Capital Flight's a SASL, it needs to be a SASL.
Yeah, I guess my initial answer to that would be I'd really like to get from you, Matt, Capital Flight, a very detailed description of how you intend to use this building, including any references to when or if in any fashion the public or anyone else other than Capital Flight would have access to this proposed building. And I think with that information, we can more accurately address this issue.
Great, that's excellent feedback. Matt, you don't have to do that right now, by the way.
Well, fantastic.
That's right.
Commissioner Randall.
I mean, I think it's reasonable if, I think what we've done thus far is pretty in keeping with what we're hoping to continue to do, just better and more of. So I think if you're familiar with how our business operates, what we do now, a lot of that will look and feel very similar. And, I feel like I'm being led down a path where you've got a desire and you want me to somehow verbalize it. If the idea is, we're going to lease you the land, but we want this building open 24/7 so that anybody can come in and hang out there if that's what they want to do. That's probably not, where we're headed. But what we're certainly wanting to do is offer Middleton what will be a substantial economic driver, as Middleton has very few spots and locations to do large scale events. Marriott's really the only one that can accommodate much over 50 or 60 people, the back room of restaurants and things like that. So it's a substantial public, benefit in that way, that this is a large event space. So from that standpoint, and the aviation side, our business is growing and growing substantially, where from the airplane side of things, we're very out of space. And to be able to continue a healthy growth strategy, we need additional hangar space. So this satisfies both of those components.
Yeah, thank you. So I think you're heading down the right path of providing information, and again, think through it and touch base with Brian as you formulate that. I appreciate that input. Cara.
Yeah, I mean, if there's specific, if there's specific use questions that folks have, I'm happy to go yes, no, maybe so, as we go down. Publicly sharing a business plan to lease the land is probably not a strategy that Capital Flight would want to engage in. And I think anybody that's run a business can probably respect that.
Yeah, I understand. Kara.
Yeah, I was back on the MEDC thing. I was still I'm still unclear of who MEDC is. That's just my own like the nebulousness of it, but it seems the arrangement seems clear right now. I just had a question, maybe it's for you, Brian, about is there been any expression about what they want to do in 2028 when their land lease is up? Is there anything to be discussed at this point, or is that still kind of up in the air?
I would say it's more up in the air, and that's a question that this, body can engage with him over the next, year or two to start that conversation. I think they're open to ideas and conversation about that building. What, long term, whether they stay involved or the city becomes, the primary driver. But that's something that would have a separate conversation with MATC about.
And
Okay,
have a
because that's still for me
separate
as part
agenda
of
item
the.
as well. We have
Say again, David?
separate agenda item. Just have to be a little careful about getting into that discussion because that really is not at all an agenda item.
Right, and
Yeah.
it's just, but for me, it's an issue with, I just have questions about that relationship with potentially building something on the site next door. There's questions I have with that, so maybe that
Okay.
comes not necessarily now, but when we have that agenda item.
Gotcha. Yep. Brian?
Yeah, just looking at this this draft agreement, and what I'm curious about is whether or not the public use of this space is something that we are prescribing to Capital Flight, or is that something that they will manage solely on their own with some broad guidelines from the Airport Commission? I guess I'm curious, how granular are we getting in terms of expectations of X number of events with Y number of people, or is it just a more nebulous open thing? And I guess how granular do we need to get involved in any of that? And is that something we need to discuss now, or is that something that needs to come down further down the pike once we hammer some of these other thoughts out?
Well, I think it's something you need to be thinking about now. I mean, right now, just the way the lease is written, it's something that they're allowed to do generally, and then it's kind of leaves it up to them. But obviously, depending on how big they are, big the events are, I mean, there's only so much parking there. You feel there should be limits? Would too many events interfere with airport stuff? It could be just as simple as making sure, there's simple conditions, just making sure there's sufficient parking, or, maybe some process just to assure that, those kind of external effects are going to be taken care of. But yeah, I mean, if there are sort of details about that you think that need to be somewhat, managed a little bit more, I think we need to talk about them now to figure out, are there more things that need to go in the lease, or is there something we can handle in different ways? But I think right now the only thing that really comes to mind that probably is something we maybe want to think about is the parking, and it may be just as simple as just a clause saying that, you have to be sure that you have enough parking secured, contracted for however, larger event is. It doesn't need to be anything.
I guess my gut feeling is that we probably should be less prescriptive and more open, is my personal thought.
Right.
With some guardrails set up that Capital Flight complies, if we proceed with all of this, of course. Guardrails in place that the spirit of the intent behind the use of this building in the development plan, as it's been expressed, is kind of adhered to, so that we have, I guess I don't want to be too prescriptive, but I also want to make sure that there's a feedback loop that if organizations within the city or county or whatever want to use this space, that there is a mechanism there that allows that to happen via Capital Flight. So I guess I don't want to get too prescriptive right now, I guess is my gut feeling.
Well, right, and that's always the balance. I mean, this is going to be a privately run business, and the more flexibility you can allow a business to have to operate, the better chances it's going to be successful. We don't want to just regulate and wring our hands over things that may not be real problems, but by the same token, you still want to make sure you have guardrails out there because, I always say, we know how Matt operates his business now, but things may change, different pressures come on to bear. Maybe something happens to Matt and the business sells and somebody else operates under this lease. We can't just always just assume that the things we think are going to go on are going on. So just want to make sure we've thought through all those things and set the guardrails at the right place so that there can be enough flexibility to do what needs to be done to have a successful business, but also that, we can get control if things are not going the way that we expect them to. And most importantly, just causing interference with the operations of the airport and causing other sort of public externalities. Now, if this is going to be a real big event space, component of the business, Matt and I have already kind of talked about how, we have to talk about, various alcohol regulation things, and that might be a place where some of those issues get addressed. We start having those conversations too, but.
Charles.
Yeah, not to switch gears too rapidly, but Article 7, Section H, the non-discrimination clause, Matt, Attorney Matt.
Yeah.
So I see race, sex, color, physical handicap, or national origin are explicitly named there. Are the categories of religion, sexual orientation, and gender identity similarly protected in it by the statutes you incorporate by reference? Or if not, do we need to name those individually as well, if we are legally able to do so under
Right. I'm sorry, where is that section again?
It's Article 7, renumbered Section H. The short title is discrimination. It's on page 7.
Oh, God, okay. Yeah. I just glided by it. Well, I mean, short answer to that is I didn't really read it. That's what's in the kind of existing hangar lease template. So I would say my answer to that question is I will take a closer look at that to see whether we need any or desire any tweaking there. But the language, the way it is written, is there because that's what's in our hangar land lease template, and it's just not a kind of boilerplate that I didn't really look at for this first draft.
Yeah, I gathered that when I was looking through it too. I said, okay, you're taking our original hangar lease that is 20 years old, and
Yeah.
And we're adding language to it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so that if we could take a look and make sure, Matt, I'd appreciate that. Also, just a small editing point, since that section has been renamed to H. The subsequent section is all costs of enforcement is also H. So all of those, all the way down to P, will need to be relettered.
Yeah, we'll get that. I don't know why that didn't. Yeah, just something the way the document I was working off of was formatted.
I guess let's call it modernization, Matt F.
Well, and yeah, maybe it's just good. I mean, because this is the form that we're using for, if we were to enter into an ordinary new hangar lease, this is what we're pulling off the shelf, I think. So,
Well,
Probably good to review it
Sure. So without,
too anyway.
okay. All right. I think we're heading in the right direction. I'll, I'll just add my thoughts and then we can move on to the next section of this. Is exactly that. I think just some guardrails, that the use would be obviously always aviation centric. As for the public component or availability or access to the public, I think again it would be for the public good or betterment to promote aviation. So what we're doing right now at the FBO building, hosting pancake breakfasts, holding Young Eagles events, VMC clubs, IMC clubs, things like that. Those are all, none of those are exclusive. They're open to anybody, but yet they're for the betterment of aviation and maybe language that's more reflective of that. What if, for some reason, a pancake breakfast can't be in the terminal building for a repair, renovation, a fire, who knows what? Then the question is, if the EAA chapter goes to Matt and says, hey, can we use your hangar? I'm sure Matt would say yes, but the question is, what if Matt's not the one who's there? The next person needs to understand that's the kind of thing that the city is looking for.
Well, and that would be addressed in a future agreement, whether that was SASO or EPID, doesn't make any difference. When an operator leaves, what Matt F. has put into that agreement is that the next person who occupies that spot would have to have an approved FBO or SASO agreement as well. So it would allow a future council, a future commission, the opportunity to weigh in on what their business model, business plan, what those desires were at that time, because of course things ebb and flow as well. But that safeguard is there because there has to be an agreement put into place that the folks at that time, both what a future business and future leadership would have to sign off on. Yeah. So that's really your safeguard to that anyway, if I keel over and don't get to do all these amazing things anymore.
Right. That's right. You're younger than me. Okay, Charles.
Yeah, I'm just to comment on Matt's comments under Article 2, Section B, a public event space, for additional governance language. I think that's a question where Matt, maybe you'd want to loop in planning staff and take a look at the zoning code for which provisions are most immediately, and based on the general description of what's going to be taking place here, just so we have a consistent approach to this sort of thing citywide. I know what's in the AIR zoning, but if you want to get really specific or put in guardrails, that's an area where we spent quite a bit of money and consulting time and planning staff time looking at all sorts of specific uses, including large events. So it might have some good starting points.
Okay. I would also point out too that this building, as it gets, completely baked and designed, will have a maximum occupancy from, state codes and fire authorities and that sort of thing as well. So, the primary event side is within the walls of the building.
Okay. Let's just kind of go down the items that Matt Fleming highlighted and just see if anybody has any immediate rough draft input for him. under Article 1, paragraph B, highlighted in red, we have the reproduction. This you said you believe is likely a measure that would be used for most hangars. Does anybody
Or
have any?
just an explanation of why I changed that, why I changed the language from what exists in the current template
Okay,
to the to this. It's just a more specific method of calculating value, but just because there was such a different operation to this particular space, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't in the future get bogged down in disputes about whether we're valuing property or real estate. It's more of a very narrow definition of what it is we are valuing, rather than just saying the hangar at fair market value. That could actually mean potentially broader things in this context.
okay.
And Matt, I was going to make a comment to you too. We're happy to go down deal points, as we work through that. But one thing that I would probably add in there for comment is, right now, any valuation is based on solely a city assessor's, comments. It probably is reasonable to put in some third-party assessment on that. When the city can take your property and decide what they want to pay you for it, that puts you in a tough spot.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we could put some kind of,
Nobody wishes to, potentially spend millions of dollars to,
I get, yeah. Some kind of dispute resolution process that so it's not.
I don't think anyone's going to storm in and try to take our beautiful new thing, but it becomes very reasonable to have some additional safeguards in there, so that the people doing the taking are also not the ones deciding how much it's worth.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
Charles?
I was just going to suggest that Capital Flight Matt and Attorney Matt just come up with a list of assessors who you agree are qualified to make an assessment. And
well,
it could be something as simple. Yeah, I don't want to get bogged down in the details, but it can be something as simple as, mutually agreed upon third-party assessment averages between blah, 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 whatever. Right. I'm not so worried about the fine points as I am the big blunt ones that, we would like to continue making substantial, personal investments, but we also need to make sure that our interests are protected through that process as well.
Right.
Yep. Agreed. Okay. We already put a lot into Article 1, Section B, a public event space, and then of course how we're going to get into that governance language. So I'll move on to the next section. Oh, Cara has her hand up.
Yeah, I mean, before you move off of that, I just wanted to put out to, for Matt Hofeld, when the time to articulate like more the vision of what he sees occurring there. Like, I know you said, Matt, like bigger and better and more from what you've already done. But I think this gets into too much of your business plan part, but I would like to have a sense of what you're thinking for the number of community events like the Rock the Ramp or the car show, like how many of those you anticipate you'd offer, which is distinct from when you are opening up the space to, say, a wedding or a hangar dance or something where a private group may be, renting from you as a business. And then like the third area would be things that you might use that space, which may not be using the airport, the runways or anything like that, but just to kind of have a sense of a flow of like how the community would be involved in the different avenues that you have either expressed in the past or also because of this unique space.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's large that's outside the walls has to go through a process, has to go through L&O and an airport commission, so everybody knows about those large scale things that happen outside the lease space, right?
Yep.
As they have. Things that happen within the building, of course, you know, for example, the terminal building, the pancake breakfast is there, the garden club meets there, and that sort of thing. And that's all wonderful, just like we've, you know, donated our building to those who have made requests for charitable fundraisers and various other things as well. I don't believe that there's any stipulation to MEDC or to Maury Airplane Company that they must do those things. You know, we do those things because that's what being part of the community is, and it's great and all of that. But there's no stipulations requiring saying, hey, when they want to do a pancake breakfast, you're going to do it. You know, so again, we want to continue doing those things, but there's no stipulation about, you know, this many times and that sort of thing. So from the standpoint, again, to clarify, outside, we got to go through L&O and all the rest of it. Inside, you know, we take requests for donated space. You know, often it goes through our internal consideration process, and frankly, more often than not, we've done that. And like I said, we've demonstrated that. The private events that happen, those are things that happen within the walls, and that is what it is. How often that happens, you know, hopefully a lot, because, you know, the building's expensive.
Right. And then I think the last thing on there, I know you were going to be talking to Matt Fleming about obviously permits and alcohol use and things like that. I was also wondering if in your design you have any plans for, you know, public access to, let's say, a cafe or restaurant or something like that, or is it still remaining more of a private thing that everybody needs to be arranged through you? Those were kinds of the questions I had.
I can answer that real easily. Zoning won't permit that. It has to be an airplane hangar. And
on that particular space.
Absolutely. And
well, and that's reasonably true as it relates to zoning. Now, you know, the terminal has had restaurant space. Certainly there's airport restaurants, and everybody gets really excited about going to airport restaurants. They don't get super excited about running them or, you know, risking investment in them. It's typically been a pretty tough thing. But there are some ambitions that were really kind of shown in sort of a phase 2 potential, maybe out there. The other questions become, you know, what we can do in a vertical sense. And to answer your question, Cara, maybe. But all of that requires some pretty significant investment in terms of engineering and design and all the rest of it. But really, Dave's absolutely correct in saying zoning drives a lot of that. You know, we can want to build a building with a carousel on the top and all the rest of it, but it doesn't necessarily go that way based on zoning. So would I love to have an amazing facility with a really awesome, you know, restaurant and all the rest of it and do it up really big? Yep. And I think, you know, we've made gestures to that in the past as well, because I see potential in that. But, you know, really, we're wanting to take things, you know, reasonably spaced out so that it can guarantee success.
And Cara, just to answer your question a little further, I mean, we can make exceptions within the zone as well. It is currently written into the zoning for the airport. So for example, say someone wanted to build a restaurant on the airport. It could be done.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's why I asked the question. I didn't realize zoning was an issue.
Right, but but Matt isn't asking for that. So he's saying he wants to build a hangar, and it's going to be within, you know, what zoning permits. So when he presents in the future a detailed layout of that building and what's in it, a certain percentage of it has to be for storing aviation, airplanes, equipment, and there can be another permitted area for non that isn't airplanes. So
Yeah, and
so
to be
yep,
to be
it could be
truthful
anything.
about the internal,
Yep.
the internal design, most of it, the majority of it, is for airplanes. That is the primary business here. Is aviation. It
Yeah, I
just
mean,
so
I think
happens that
your current hangar is an excellent example. It meets it
It-
it hits every single checkbox, but yet it's gorgeous, and it does it the way it should.
if you like the current hangar, you'll like this one.
Right, exactly. Lindsay.
Yeah, I just had a quick question around, it sounds like we're probably already gonna, this will be a future agenda topic. Obviously, there's some modernization of language that's gonna be going through, so we're
Yeah.
already gonna be revisiting this. I just want to try and keep us a little bit on track time-wise because we're over an hour in and still on
Right. So
agenda item 1 of 6. So just wanted to see if there's any question that we need to, or what we still need to
so
cover today.
what I'd like to do is, let's just jump right down to article. I agree with you. Let's just keep it on track and just hit some high points to provide some information here. The next item is under Article 3, Section A1. Is the $500 fee adequate to cover current costs for the city? Just kind of a yes/no question. We don't have to dive into the details. Matt, you can look at it, consult with Brian. That
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that we would probably just look at what our current zoning fees and everything for similar
Yep.
zoning approvals there. I just highlighted that
exactly.
just because I knew we would have to do something about it. And I think probably maybe, I need to have a more conversation with Matt about, what about the term and things like that.
Again, I would say, just whatever would be modern, whatever would be updated to current city standards.
All right, it's
Yep.
it's got to be enough, much like it's got to be enough to allow Matt to reasonably expect to recoup some investment, but also, be short enough where we can have a chance to go back and revisit it and make changes for the times. And what that number is, don't know, but that's clearly an area of further discussion. I think the issue on, I made a point on storage. I think maybe that paragraph, I just asked Matt to look through a little bit. I'm just not sure how much of that language really applies to this particular situation. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but I'm not sure it's something we really need to discuss here. I think the biggest thing that going forward to try to move this forward that I feel a little most uneasy about, that I just don't know from a practical sense, is it really just comes down to the Article 7, Section C is just simply saying that you have to be a SASO or FBO or to have one of those agreements. As I understand, you need one of those agreements, and those agreements obligate you to provide certain services to the flying public, for lack of a better word. And I think that's certainly sufficient to address the bare minimum of what I think the plan calls for. But is that sufficient? I mean, can you have a situation, you have a SASO, but there's just one service being provided and it's super incidental and the rest is something that's so private? Is that language enough to ensure that this is operating the way you want? And that's what I don't really have a good feel for. And I don't necessarily think that everyone needs an answer now, but it's certainly something I think that everyone wants to talk about, or will want to think about, and at least be prepared to discuss about what changes, if any,
Sure.
be needed to that.
Well, and I think David started out asking that question on this. Charles chimed in saying, he's comfortable with language that is broad as possible, allows as much flexibility. Commission members don't have to make a final decision on that tonight. Again, it's just discussion only. And
Sure.
So what I wanted to do was just make sure we're okay with the Article 3C, the rate. So, again, if anybody has any thoughts, then Matt and Brian just look at what needs to be modernized and what needs to be updated. And then and obviously we put a lot into our Article 7B. The one thing you highlighted there, are there any special terms we need for park? And this one is, I think, a big one, because that was one of the comments that Jack Young brought into the discussion. And I guess what I'd really like to point out about it is, if you look at page 72 of the packet and note the RPZ. And Matt Hofeld's already said and recommended, an area for a park, call it viewing area. And I guess my initial thoughts on this are, we would really just have to ask Mead and Hunt. Take a look at the rough draft and say, where can we put a space? It would just involve basically moving that perimeter fence, so anybody who comes into the parking lot, parks their car, can walk over there, sit down at a picnic table, and watch airplanes. Because that's what.
And we've had those preliminary conversations with Mead and Hunt, and it looks to be that is no problem with that. And I want to go, just briefly speak on the intent of why we did this. I think the viewing area is important. I think it's good. Of course, we're asking to, occupy where it is currently. We think that it's a higher and better value, but as a result of that, we're making the offer that we will oversee something to continue that that viewing area, to have its existence, and hopefully improve it to where it's better. So really, we just recognize the importance, I think, of both things, and coming up with what is a compromise to hopefully have better outcomes for our company and that area. And again, preliminary conversations with that shows that even our vision for what that could be is certainly feasible.
Right. And Brian Gatto, I guess my question then would be, is this the kind of thing where, I guess I'm just thinking how the city would handle any development where a piece of land is going to get taken, something's going to get displaced. The city already has thoughts and working with the developer. Hey, essentially the city's saying, we need to be compensated or to stay in spirit with it. Is this the kind of thing where Matt Hofeld can reach out to Mead and Hunt directly and say, this is our rough draft, this is what we want to do, and it's on him to sort that out? And then come back to us?
I think whether it's Matt or the city, Mead and Hunt will be one of the pieces in there to take a look at where the park could be located. BOA will likely also need to weigh in on park location. And again, I am by no means an expert in this, but I'm going to guess FAA would also want to, depending on where the park is located in relation to the long-term RPZ, that's probably something they'll comment on as well. So between all three entities, I suspect all three will have some thoughts on where on the property that area could be relocated.
Yeah, and just putting on my Alder hat for a moment, because what I could see here is we put a lot of work in at our level here, kind of commission level and we weed out a lot of these things, and then all of a sudden works its way up the chain and someone says, well, yeah, what about the park? And then it's just the brakes are just put on because of exactly what Brian Gatto said. We need BOA, we need FAA, we're going to move a fence line, we're going to move stuff around. So something that we would think is, oh, no big deal, we can make this happen, all of a sudden becomes just boils down to a technical issue, not so much, hey, I want it, I don't want it, but the reality is can we do it the way we want it? So,
But to specifically answer your question, I think, yeah, Mead and Hunt would be the first point of contact. And once, I get a sense from them, some possibilities, then, BOA and ultimately the FAA would want to weigh in on the proposal.
okay, is that on us, the city, or is that on
Probably would
Capital
be
Flight?
on, it'd be on us. There would likely be some information that Mead and Hunt and others would ask of Capital Flight, but at least we can introduce the topic for conversation.
Yeah, because I sort of see that as we've got to get that resolved. Because if we move this up the chain and say, well, guess what? They're just we can't have a park space. And it's not because we don't want it, it's because the BOA and FAA say we can't. And I just want to make sure that is not going to get in the way of any of this. Because if they come back to us and say, guess what? You can't have a park. You can build a hangar where you want to build a hangar, but you can't use any of that space. You can't move the fence line, essentially. Well, then we need to talk about that and figure out what to do. So, and to Commissioner Nye's point, we will come back at this. What I would ask people to do, because this will really help the process along enormously, is send your ideas and thoughts and email directly to Brian or directly to me. So what we can do is just put them together. Matt Fleming will have them and see how it integrates into this very draft of a draft language. And then when we come back again to look at this, we'll be getting much closer to where we want to be. My question for Brian would be, and I guess this would be a city planning department question, is the preliminary design and drawings provided by Capital Flight, are those adequate? Or does the city want more information from
I
Capital
mean,
Flight?
from a pure concept standpoint, I think they give a sense of, from just a building wrap, what it would look like. I don't know in terms of like a site plan review that the Plan Commission would be involved in if we've got enough detail on that piece. But I think to Mr. Hofeld's point, he wanted to get a sense of, from an airport commission standpoint, was this even something that was, available for discussion before spending the time to go down the Plan Commission route. So if it seems that the Airport Commission wants to continue to work on this item, then we can figure out from the Plan Commission what additional information they might need for a future review.
So would it be fair to say, like tonight, right now, so we can move on, do we simply make a motion? So as a commission, we are in agreement to keep moving forward, or we are in agreement to not? Would that be the right thing to provide the city and Capital Flight with?
I mean, yeah, that sort of information in terms of desire to continue conversation would be an appropriate motion at this point.
Okay.
Myers, I'll make that motion.
Okay, great. We won't even, we'll let Brian leave it the way he put it. Matt Fleming's here if that satisfies a need. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Very good. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Uh,
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you. Is Kevin available?
I do not see him on as of yet, so maybe let's keep going on the agenda and worst case
Okay.
we'll come back.
All righty. Confluence Pond, Capital Flight. Did someone? Okay, nothing. Matt Hofeld, thank you again. Thank you for your time.
Very welcome. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome to stay on. Okay.
And
Review, okay, I'm just getting back to my agenda. All right, so continuing discussion, review, discussion, and potential action item on request for proposal, RFP for airport manager service contract. I'd like to open it up with commissioners. Where we left off last time was this is a continuation for comments and refinement. One of the things we have to determine is, any changes or continuation in terms of a 5, 10, or 15-year manager's agreement. That's one of the big questions. Otherwise, I'm looking for input from the commission, simply to continue refining this document or answering any questions that may still be lingering. And then I'm, happy to provide some input that I've received from others, in terms of questions along those lines. Who had their hand up first, David or Kara? I'll just do it the way I see it on my screen. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to express, I had previously expressed some concerns about my difficulties of, in some respects, distinguishing the FBO agreement from the airport manager agreement. And at this point, having heard everybody else and consider what's in the document, I think I'm comfortable to, if everybody else wants it as it is, I'm comfortable to leave it as it is. And I think that my concerns about what is going to be done and what people are proposing to do for the manager agreement will come out in their submittals of anybody who submits it. So my prior concerns will be allayed by the process of seeing what people submit that they're wanting to do for that agreement.
Thank you. Kara.
Yeah, and I just was following up to see if there's anything else, David, because the piece that I was looking at is like specific performance characteristics for if we're sending this out for, if we agree to send it out for a request for proposal, that there's clear parameters, clear objectives, parameters for performance. We both could serve Rich right now, or if this does go out in the future. I don't know if there was anything on that you and Brian or Rich are working on, or just any update you have on that question I had.
Sure. Well, my thoughts were, and I see, what Brian's done here with the documents is one document is obviously the airport manager's agreement, right? The other document is the request for proposal. And essentially, what the RFP is doing is taking the manager's agreement and really trying to kind of condense it in a way that you would call it post-it kind of description of tasks or duties. So, as far as metrics go in evaluating an airport manager, that is the agreement, right? Each paragraph that you see in the agreement where the duties and responsibilities of the manager are outlined, well, those are the categories for evaluating the manager So if you look at section I, which is kind of just call it a rundown of some items. For example, right? Interior maintenance, exterior maintenance, custodial responsibilities, right? So those are the types of things where how do we want to quantify that? How do we want to get detailed in that in an evaluation process or in an RFP? And I'm sort of backing away and saying, let the city look at that and do what the city does when they send any kind of RFP out. Use their discretion and interpretation on something like this. So if I were to say in theory, sit down with an airport manager right now and discuss interior maintenance and look at this, am I going to go, does it boil down to city staff and a representative of the airport commission walking around and going in the bathrooms and looking behind the toilets, or is it, kind of feedback? Has anyone ever said to the city or reported to the city, geez, the place is messy, the place is this, or the place is that? Well, then maybe the airport manager isn't keeping it neat, So I leave it kind of to that fuzziness.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems like, I just want to make sure that obviously, Rich has been serving as the airport manager and he feels supported, like there's clear measures for him. That's obviously between he and Brian, then is what I'm gathering.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that, because I have not had a conversation with Rich about that. So that would obviously apply to him, but apply to anybody else who's coming in. Like what would
Absolutely.
be clearly, expected of me.
Yeah. And
That's all.
So the big question, the $1,000 question is, when you look at this manager's agreement, is there anything about it that's missing, or is there anything about it that doesn't need to be there anymore? Are we saying that it's you can think of some big pie in the sky thing? Is it the manager's job to go out in the city of Middleton and promote business and economic growth at the airport, or not, right? That's the kind of thing. And I'm satisfied with the language of the manager's agreement. Charles.
Yeah, I'd actually I'm generally satisfied with the language of the agreement. But I think that what we might consider as a commission is making the performance review language between the manager's contract and the FBO contract consistent. So we would insert a clause similar to what's in the FBO under Section K annual performance review, which is in December of each year of this agreement, operators shall undergo a performance review of operators' performance during the preceding calendar year. And the performance review shall be conducted by the Airport Commission. The specific topics and scope of the performance review shall be as specified in this agreement. So we obviously change operator to manager, but we could otherwise keep the language the same. That draft language encompasses all of the things that are spelled out in the agreement, which would be, it puts all of the things which are spelled out in the agreement as responsibilities as fair game if for the performance review, if I'm reading it correctly. And Matt or Brian, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about that. It makes it time bound, and it involves both staff and the commission, because our staff liaison, Brian, does not quite spend as much time at the airport as the overwhelming majority of airport commissioners. So they may notice things to bring up during that performance review, which would not be immediately discernible to our city staff.
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's exactly kind of refinement we're looking for. Brian, any thoughts on that?
I guess my only question is, so you want continued work on this document, which I can do, or are you wanting to put this out for receipt of proposals, I guess, for lack of better phrasing? So just in terms of action going forward tonight, do you want to continue to talk about this, or is your direction with the change that Commissioner Myers mentioned that you want to put this out for response?
I mean, time-wise, if the commission would like to look at this, we'll just call it the final version of it at our January meeting. That's still a reasonable amount of time. I'm looking at the calendar here.
I think so. At our last meeting, we had discussed, having a deadline established for making a decision one way or the other by March. So if you wanted to have one more opportunity to think of things and look at it and provide any final commentary at the January meeting.
The January meeting looks like it won't happen.
That meeting, we would likely just move to
The
given
8th.
the holiday following on the 1st. We would, likely meet on the 8th. And then you could have an opportunity to provide any final discussion and feedback and make a decision on how you want to proceed.
Sure.
On that item, and I'd go from your direction there.
That would be fine. I don't want anybody to feel rushed or pressured on this. Because I think, having like another set of eyes like Charles already did tonight is quite useful and helpful. Okay. We don't need any motion on this because we already at our last meeting agreed to continue this process.
Mr. Chair,
Charles?
I'd ask that the revised version that we look at in the January meeting include the language I suggested.
Yes, absolutely.
But
do we need
obviously amended to specify manager.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take that as I'll include it in a red line so you can see it. So
we don't need a motion for that. That's just direction to staff. Thank you. And no news from Kevin. Maybe Kevin is not going to be on board.
Yeah, I don't see him. So I guess I didn't get a chance to talk with him about. So if we're going back up to number 1 for just a moment on the agenda, I didn't get a chance to talk with him about exactly what his ask was of the commission. I know he had emailed both airport commission members and a few other city committees. I think that my understanding was he was looking for anyone who was interested in providing not only feedback, but perhaps serving on
Yeah, I'm happy to brief folks on that. I've been involved in this. There's been some communications back and forth. Let me get back up to where I want to get in here. In the packet so I don't lose track. Okay. So there's already been some communication sent out from Adaptive Restoration. What I did as chair is there are some people already expressed interest to me. Charles and Cara received an invite to and Rich to sit in on this, call it a listening session. These are common. The city holds these when they're creating master plans like this. And so what I also informed them is that at our meeting right now, if there's any other members of this body that simply want to sit in and provide feedback and input based on the information that's in front of you tonight, you're welcome to. The meeting date has not been set. There's a meeting poll that is out there for some time frame coming up here in December, and then into January. And at these meetings, what adaptive restoration simply does is document any thoughts, ideas, suggestions, or comments you have. So if you would like to be included in that, I will have Brian email you the meeting invite.
Yeah, I'll just plan on emailing the full airport commission when I get the invite from Kevin or whomever. I'll send the invite to the whole commission, and you
Sure.
can attend at your discretion and
Yep.
leisure. I would just maybe ask if multiple members are going to attend. I would likely just put a notice of possible quorum if there's going to be
Yeah.
a potential quorum of you at the listening session. But that's the only thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only thing it would be. And it's really not, it's not the type of thing where we're making decisions. We're simply providing them with input. What happens is they'll gather the information from us. They'll take it back to the city, to the Conservancy lands and other bodies where actual kind of decisions would be made. And so what I wanted to kind of point out here tonight, because this is comments that I would then take to that meeting, was very specifically regarding page 2 of their task order, section 5.2. And what I wanted to point out to this body was the language of that section, where it specifically states recommend and delineate an area of the Middleton Airport for designation as a native vegetation management area. And that immediately raised a host of questions on my part. And again, this would be more back to city staff and the planning department. I don't even know if you can do that, plain and simple, because it's an airport. So I don't know if another body can come along and say, oh, hey, guess what? We're going to designate an area within the airport that is identified as a native vegetation management area. I don't know. I mean, the airport's an airport. Now, what grows at the airport and how we manage it, that's where a plan like this could be useful. So the question is, do we provide them input and say, well, that's great. We want your expertise and knowledge on how to manage the areas around these confluences of water and vegetation. But we want your help in managing it in a way that won't attract wildlife, but will have the greatest benefit to our ecosystem, to control erosion and runoff and all kinds of things like that. So that's the kind of input we have to provide them. As far as like the question I raised, that's a question that is really almost a city staff thing, because we've never designated an area within the airport as a natural vegetation management area, other than the prairie that's in front of the airport as you walk in the door. Rich.
It just, there are guidelines as to what can and cannot be done on airports that the FAA puts out.
Exactly, yeah.
Propping, certainly anything that could become even more of an animal attraction that we already have. So, that definitely needs to be looked at. And I'm sure there's guidance available. I haven't done any research on it, unfortunately, or not, other than just the topping or what we did early on.
Yeah, and so to emphasize that this is a draft document, and this is why they're asking for our input, and that is why specifically I requested that the Airport Commission be involved in this. Originally, the Airport Commission wasn't even part of this project. It was just, oh, hey, the city has this, we're developing a plan for our confluence ponds, and the airport property is part of it. And this consulting firm is going to put it together like they've done other plans for us. They've done master plans for all of our green space and our conservancies and lands and other areas. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the airport to really have some input and express your opinions. And I know Cara has a long history with the city. Should have included that photo in our agenda packet. Picture of, I don't know, an 8-year-old, 9-year-old girl sitting on top of the Pheasant Branch Conservancy sign. It's very cute. So if you have thoughts, I'll take them tonight. I'll make note. I will carry those to the meeting. Rich is here. Rich will be at the meeting. Cara is here. And I think Cara will be at the meeting. So there will be some representation, and anybody else who wants to. Kevin Short with the city is an outstanding person to work with. His knowledge of these things is fantastic. And Evelyn Williams, the person putting this together, I've had a chance to observe her work now for more than 2 years. It's a competent group of people, but they will be the very first to say, yeah, we don't know anything about an airport and what goes on within an airport. Cara.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, for seeing that the airport commission, could be involved, or some members of us, given, the part of the North Fork is really an integral part of our airport. And I can also speak highly for adaptive restoration, because when I initially was supporting the airport with a project on the North Fork there, there's an employee who's no longer with them, but she provided me a lot of the consulting that helped guide me as I was coming up with the plan, working with Rich about the the goat grazing, the burning, and dealing with all the vegetation then. So it just seems like a natural fit. Anyway, so I'm very excited that they are willing to incorporate our thoughts from the North Fork that exists on the airport boundary, within the boundary.
Yeah, and and thinking about what I would propose in terms of language for that section, I would almost say something like recommend to manage vegetation in an area of the airport that will promote a healthy ecosystem and not impact the safety of aviation operations. It can just be something that simple. Because I think a person like Evelyn, then she'll understand. But she doesn't realize that the FAA has these strict rules that say, hey, birds flying in front of airplanes, not a good idea.
Right.
Things like that.
Right.
So.
And Rich's input, and maybe less time out there blasting, birds if the vegetation is kept in a way that the habitat is distinct.
Yeah.
What do I want to say? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
encouraging them to habituate the airport.
Yeah, and and Mead and Hunt even provided us with some information about that there's actually vegetation that can be planted that discourages foraging of some animals. And the kind of question Evelyn would be able to answer, she'd say, oh yeah, I'm aware of those grasses and plants, and might have some valuable input as to even how to go about something like that, or not go about it. We don't want to do anything we don't want to introduce invasive species to an ecosystem either. The goal is to have the airport's ecosystem to be harmonious with the whole area. So that's certainly my goal.
Yeah, thank you. That's exciting.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions? Otherwise, we can move on to discussion our next item. Charles?
We've been meeting for almost 2 hours. We
Oh,
can
you
do
want
this one.
to defer? You want to defer?
Yeah, yeah, let's actually just defer this one
Sure.
to a month where we have a very light agenda.
Well, we're getting close.
Yeah.
We'll get the manager RFP off our list, and then we'll just deal with Capital Flight, and then
Yeah.
it'll be back to boring as usual. So, okay. Our standing unleaded fuel updates and or things in that area. Does anybody have any questions or know anything other than what I've continued to read out at the Eagle website, which is yeah, there's nothing going on, right? We are where we are with the vendors and the unleaded fuel that's out there. I did see one recent in AvWeb, a Swiss company is claiming to build the next generation of an electric training aircraft, but the airplane might not even see service till 2030. So with stuff like that, that's nice to know. That's wonderful. But I guess for those people who aren't familiar with obviously how airports and aviation operates, it just is another example that aviation is trying to get there. Everybody knows that maybe someday there would actually be an electric training aircraft that is affordable and really usable because 1 hour of flight time doesn't give anybody a lot of confidence in being able to fly very far other than within line of sight of an airport. But if it improves, it improves. Maybe it will. Brian, then we'll move on to review of the finances. I'm not missing anything, am I?
Nope. Nope. I
Okay.
think you're right. Finances, again, pretty standard. The one item I'm still working to get incorporated in here for the next financial report is you'd ask for an accounting in a separate line item for RPZ related payments. So that's something I'm working with finance on. And as soon as that gets in there, I'll send you out a updated monthly financial report if that's ready prior to our next meeting. So that more information to come on that.
But for now, that would be our under the other category.
Yeah, I'd have to check with finance to see exactly where they're having that located, but yeah, we'll have a separate line item for that.
Okay, because it kind of looks like to me, I mean, that's where it is right now on our current disclosure, but okay. That's just the unfortunate reality that we're dealing with. So I'd rather not look at that spreadsheet and pretend it doesn't exist. Okay, future events. We'll continue then putting our review and discussion of policy for using the airport as a community space for future items. One of the items that was mentioned, and we can think about that, is how does the airport respond and communicate to, shall we say, communications the city receives concerning the airport and its operation and function. Do we respond? How do we respond? Or if we respond? It can be a discussion item. If anything, it would be more informational just to help educate this body on how the city would go about that process and if it's something we want to do. And we could, and I don't know, maybe it can just be part of a future, my future update, talk about phasing of the movement areas, the ramp, taxi rehabilitation, and then ultimately moving on to the runway rehabilitation. Rich has information on that could even be incorporated into a future manager's report, probably. I don't think it would have to necessarily be an item. So if anybody else has any other items that you'd like reviewed, reach out to Brian or myself, and we'll add those to a future meeting. If I'm missing anything, just let me know. Thank you, Commissioner Nye, for reminding us of time sensitivity. Appreciate that. I think it's a valid concern. And as we won't be meeting and seeing each other till next year, I wish everybody a happy and healthy holiday season and new year. Once again, I can't state how important it is and appreciate the fact that you are here, that you're engaged and you're involved. It's a significant commitment to time, but it's also an enormous benefit to the city and to the future and stability of our airport. And so with that,